Orb on the Movements of the Earth, Episode 3.
そろそろ父さんの帰りか。
Gotta hide it from Dad. That's extreme.
さて、下書きは燃やした。
This lifestyle. Do you have to do that every time? I guess you do, right?
帰ったぞ、ラファウ。
Hope you're not studying astronomy in here.
何を燃やしたんだ?
You know, it's funny to think about because he's this prodigy in science and astronomy, etc. But he's still a kid, right? He still has the sensibilities of a 12-year-old. Dad's already suspicious too. He's gonna figure it out.
これは
And also there's evidence
まさか
right there.
やはり一筋縄ではいかないな。
Yeah.
まだ軌道が完璧な深淵には程遠い。
Speaking of like the idea that we can't know everything and we just have to fill in knowledge gaps, how many people alive today could prove heliocentrism? Even with videos and stuff, and it might actually get tougher because of AI imagery. The mistake that often comes next from this kind of thing is everyone is just parroting what they've been told and therefore it's not true. When really, just looking at it, the most accurate answer is probably something like, I actually don't know, I haven't confirmed it. It just seems like the most reasonable thing to assume based on what I've heard, which is perfectly fine and reasonable. It only gets weird when you start burning people for going against the status quo and sacrificing other things that we actually do really know, like the importance of decency to other people for one idea or the other, regardless of its veracity.
これじゃあまだ天
Or to
動
be
説の
followed?
方が正確。
ああ、
Leave me alone. Go away.
君は先日の
This is not an accident.
聞いたよ、君賢いんだって
Don't get too smart.
少しでも皆様の役に立てるように。
Technically, not a lie.
そのネックレス
It was given to you by Hubert, and you're still wearing it. And seeing as he was a heathen heretic.
自戒です。異端への怒りと警戒を忘れないようにするためです。
Correct answer.
彼が研究していた内容は知っているかい?
Something stupid and heretical.
彼がしていたのは今の正しい宇宙の形、天動説に反するものだ。
As we all know.
本当に関わっていないと神に誓えるか?
This is a tough one.
もちろん誓います。
I guess not so tough for
今の宇宙を信じています。
And pragmatically, pretty easy one. Don't tell this guy
ご
anything.
協力どうも。
では。
Please excuse me forever and never talk to me again.
なんでみんなそうも言葉を重んじるんだか。
Good question, Rafal. This is me letting you know
てか、なんで
that I know.
まさか父さんに見つかっ
He's not gonna report him, is he?
計算が。
Oh, he's helping. Wow. Yeah, his father's in on it. His father totally knows.
燃やすなら灰に
If
な
you're
る
gonna do this carefully. Do it right.
この修正、父さんのものですか?
This is interesting fork in the road here for their relationship.
ここらで一旦休んで、大学が落ち着いてきたら研究を再開するか。
If you can. Can you even stop yourself at this point? Interesting. Ooh, I have a weird feeling about the father because he also so clearly has it. But speaking of that hierarchy of values and the deepest one often like informing and leading the other ones, just my first impression is that his is survival and comfort and not even judging it. But I can imagine that being dangerous when those two things come in conflict, you know, like if they were to be investigated or something. I could be totally wrong, but my first impression when he wasn't there at first was that he had gone to report his son just in the off chance this would implicate himself in the future. To give him the most benevolent reading though, it's not selfishness or self-concern, but concern for his son. It remains to be seen how much of each it is. Episode 3, I believe in heliocentrism.
もしこれがバレたら
There go your fingernails. Why are you always around?
どうも
There's not as much heresy as I thought. He has way too much free time. Though he does seem good at his job. He's got good instincts.
はい
Why are you so nervous?
異端は異端です。それに山ほどいる教え子の一人に過ぎない
Hubert barely remember
特
him.
別な思いはありません。あなたに異端の前科があって
Oh, you do. This explains a lot. He went down that road and didn't like it. He found out.
フベルトとは研究の話なんてしていない。
His terror is just like oozing out of him. It's so
そうで
obvious.
すよね。
He's enjoying it. He's just playing around with them. With all of them.
前科の印象を消そうと必死だ。二度目の異端だけは避けたいんでしょう。
You're so good, it's sort of suspicious.
異端者本人のためにも最も強力な方法で悪を払
God, it's so awful.
う。どうするか知ってますでしょ
Yes. Fingernails burning, etc. But I sure do enjoy watching it. Actually, it's worse than that. I mean, you know how that goes. It's really fun when you burn your first person, but by the time you've burnt your 100th person, it gets a little bit repetitive.
燃やすんでしょ。生きたままで。
His prayer hands look more like begging hands.
ただ火炙りにおいてそんな肉体的苦
You
痛
know,
な
he doesn't really
些
care
細な
about
ことだ。
the whole faith stuff.
ズバリ無になる。 記憶も経験も意識も魂も死後の世界も全部無だ。私はそんな運だ。ごめんだな。
Yeah, God, awful.
さて、あんたの子供異端研究してるだろう。
Okay.
図星ですか。
Oh man, it was so easy.
Pretty
good psychological tactics there. He already knew, he was just playing around with them. And the father's too panicked to really see it clearly. His mind is screaming at him with, don't show that anything is wrong, don't show that anything is wrong. And then of course the effect is, his behavior screams something is wrong. It's kind of like when you have a social interaction and you're like, please don't be awkward, please don't be awkward. And then the first thing out of your mouth is the most awkward possible thing. Act casual, and you're the least casual. Because what it means to be casual is to not be thinking about anything and to be relaxed. Also, I think this sort of direct questioning is a police tactic. I've heard this from my friend, and also I've experienced it from police. In my neighborhood growing up, there was a bus where you had to buy tickets in advance, and they do randomized police checks for tickets, and so you can sort of gamble on whether or not you'll be caught that day. And one of the very few times I boarded without a ticket, I got pulled off the bus by police, and I did the whole like, oh, I bought a ticket, but I don't know where it was. And he just looked at me dead on and was like, why did you buy a ticket? And I just immediately caved, and I'm like, I don't know, I should have bought a ticket, but I didn't. And then he wrote me a ticket, and I'm sitting there like, why did I admit to that so easily? I have this whole story going. Sometimes it works to just blast through with the assumption that that thing has occurred. Oh, maybe this is happening sooner than I thought. This could happen instantly. You'd be liable, yeah. Oh no. We're about to find out that value scale thing. Oh my god, yeah, it's over for you. Damn, to be turned in by your father. Not that I can really judge. I mean, he's just terrified out of his mind. And they do really burn people at the stake really easily. I'm so sorry, man. This is a cowardly moment for Pataki, but I actually feel kind of bad for him for now having to live with this on his conscience, you know, turning in his own son, finding out who you really are like that. And he'll blame himself, and I mean, like, it is his decision ultimately, and he didn't handle that very well. He also was a fish swimming with a shark from the very first moment he opened the door. It's like domains in Jujutsu Kaisen. You imagine things on an even field, but when you step into someone else's domain, it's a different thing. This is this guy's life. We know this from fighting stuff, right? Like, no matter how tough you think you are, if you are unfortunate enough to step into a ring with a UFC fighter, you're gonna get your ass kicked. Same is true for so many things, like haggling with people who haggle for a living, protecting yourself from scams or pickpocketing if you know nothing about those things. Everyone thinks they're too smart to fall for a scam. A lot of people fall for scams. Or, I don't know, dating escorts who specialize in creating fantasies for men, etc., etc. Pataki didn't stand a chance, but he has to live with the consequences.
この前の計算修正。あれはどう？ラファウ。
We need to stop talking now about this. I have big news for you. You're not going to study theology after all.
地動説は証明できると思うか?
Or is he in here right now, or is he listening? Read my eyes, Rafal. Read my eyes. God, this is so terrifying. This is going to be something so hard to understand. Is that what that is? Oh, that's the mouth thing we saw. This is his real specialty, it's fear. I did it. I was trying to prove heliocentrism. Rafal has shown that he thinks it's pragmatic and useful to lie. I don't think he'll really care about that. That's actually wise advice just from a terrible person. Tough position to be in. This is so scary because it takes away our lifeline. We had a little bit of a buffer there, which is now gone. It's just our feet dangling above the fire. I think if he wants to continue, there are ways, but he wasn't fully accounting for the gravity of the situation. Give it a little bit of time and distance. Maybe like get out of this city. I don't know. I actually like his line about how it's important to know what to give up in life. One of the realizations that seems painful at first is that you actually just can't do everything. The good news is you can do anything as long as that anything is not overly specific and is general enough that it hits the needs in what those needs actually truly are fundamentally at the core. And it's really cool to have a clear vision of what you want and need. But speaking of taking things for granted just because they're in your environment, it's also really useful to know what you don't need, as long as it's genuine and not sour grapes because you actually feel you don't know how to get it or you can't get it. It's just that he's asking Rafal to do this for like a core value of like seeking the truth and following your conscience, which you probably do need.
宣言して資料を燃やす。まあ、やってもいいだろ。
Yeah, they're making it sound sort of easy. It's all in here.
局面も多分なんとかなるだろう。
I'm a little bit suspicious this is all there is.
資料を焼いても積んでない。
Right. So far so good.
天文が禁止されても仲間がいなくても積んでない。
This is a really cool, positive way to look at this, but there's a catch.
なぜ僕はこんなことをしてるんだ。
Good
なぜ
question.
僕はこんなことになったんだ
Yeah, things are going so well. Yeah, he could have continued living in the Matrix. Could have taken the blue
僕
pill.
は秀才のままで
What really matters?
世界はずっとちょろいはずでなぜ僕はこんなことを
It does seem really foolish looking at it that way,
指
right?
導説なんて
Who cares?
何の意味も
Yeah, well, because it's not about heliocentrism, really.
あの頃と同じで僕が天文を続けるのは合理的じゃないあの頃と同じで空はずっと遠くにある
It's the same celestial calling.
今はあの頃よりはっきりと空がよく見えるこんなに美しかったのか
That's him growing. It's the same moon, it's the same image, but he's grown the vessel he has for receiving its beauty. To try to answer his question, why does it matter and why wouldn't it just be better to live in comfort? To really try to steel man the other position, if it was a different character and the person's destiny, you know, the person's heart, their desire, their interest lay in their family. Let's say they had a wife and kids and their family was everything to them and his whole mission in life was to provide for and raise his kids. I wouldn't necessarily judge that as a choice. I think the judgment comes down to like the honesty about what actually is taking place, who and what it's for, and how deep the values are that are leading that decision. I think one of the ways it ends up breaking down in consequence is it just for you? Is the extent of your potential and your contribution to maximize your own comfort and well-being? One of the things that makes following universal values so immediately useful and sort of intrinsically worthwhile is that you are enacting a pattern that, if widely adopted, would lead towards, and this is massive oversimplification, but the greatest thing for the most people, the most expansive, the most constructive, the most developmentally sound, the least prone to the counterforces of the destruction and atrophy inherent in nature. Maybe what it comes down to at some point down the road of that assessment is that it's not really about you. You're a participant in a much greater whole. And what I think is cool about that, and maybe not intuitively obvious immediately, when you actually start to feel that way and feel aligned with it, it actually ends up feeling like a personal reward. It actually feels really good to have honor and a strong spirit. I think that's partly what's represented by the beauty of the moon in Rafal's eye. It's totally different from the initial reward system, right? Like, oh, I perform well, I get a comfort, you know, I get praise, or I get a nice house. People tell me I'm cool. And you hear and practice that framework for years and years and years. But there's something calling to you that, if you're lucky, can coexist with those creature comforts, but sometimes it's counter to those things. But you recognize that there's a real beauty and sweetness there that becomes compelling. And it's very confusing. It might even be the exact same pattern of his struggle with world centrism versus heliocentrism, where like everyone knows the earth is the center of the universe. So why am I having these doubts? It's because there's something off about that and you're getting a sense of it. Why wouldn't I just ditch heliocentrism and live a comfortable life and get praised and everyone tell me I'm wonderful? Well, because there's something a little bit off about that. That's an inherited model of what the meaning of life is, with also biological reinforcements and a lot of naturally occurring chemical rewards, further enhanced by fear of its opposite. And to take the least malevolent reading of this whole thing, it's maybe there for the best of intentions. We're just trying to function. It's the best way we know to apply a working model that allows you to live and meet some bare minimum on average, so that you're not in the absolute worst state you could be in. And we have some memory of how terrible that actually can get. So it's very important to fight to keep at least the average. But the trade-off is that it's average. It's not perfect. It's not the ideal. And so people who don't understand any better will see the ideal as a threat to the safe, harmonious average of any given moment. And it's so difficult and it's crazy because sometimes they're right. Sometimes you go too far off from the foundation you've made, thinking that you're smarter than this now, that, oh, we don't need that anymore. We're so smart compared to people of the past who laid these rules. And you have to repeat this cycle that leads to terrible outcomes that people already knew and solve for it so convincingly that we forgot it was dangerous. It's a constant struggle. Rafal thought he was going to move the earth, but instead he was the one that moved.
被告は全天体が地
He
球で
might
はなく
actually fight here, which would be crazy and non-pragmatic, but
我々教会側は被告に改心の宣言
they're so nice, they're so
および
kind,
関係資料の開示と文書を要求してい
giving a
ます
sinner like this a second chance.
その入学許可証を受け取ります
This looks hella official for that time period. It looks like it was
肝
printed.
心なのは何を諦めるかだ正解を選べ言葉では何とでも言えるこの局面も何とかなる
He might do this to spite himself.
宣言してください
宣言します
Oh
僕は
no!
地動説を
I
信じてま
have
す
such mixed feelings. Holy crap, holy crap, holy crap. It's so badass, but so impractical. This kid is something else, man. 12 years old to be this convicted. He's so far ahead of everything in every way except hiding evidence, tragically. If only you could have been this amazing at burning paper. This is so crazy. I really respect it, but I feel heart-wrenched. It's heart-wrenching for what this means for his life. How do you feel when the adrenaline wears off?
なぜだ
囚人でもこんなにいいものが飲めるんですね。
He's not 21. You know what? Actually, it's great that they have him drinking wine because this is one of those things that might get people upset. Applying modern conception of decency and modern law of the land universally to all people at all time and something like some deeper objective truth. As we all know, based on universal objective truth, you are only equipped to drink alcohol when you are 21 years old. As God commanded. It's just science. I'm still stuck on this document. Look at this. That's typed. That is typed. They have different colored fonts. They have tables. This is also very Socrates apology. I'm not stupid. You're stupid.
拷問前日に特別に与えるものだよ。
そうでしたか。一緒に飲みませんか？
He looks
一人ではもったいない。
pretty okay.
なぜこんな台無しにした？
Well, I don't answer to you.
あなた方が相手にしてるのは僕じゃない。異端者でもない。ある種の想像力であり、好奇心であり、筆境。
Right.
それは知
You
性
can't kill truth. You can't torture truth. It's a losing battle ultimately.
では勝つのは君か。
Eventually.
こ
And
の
maybe
選
not me
択は
personally.
君の未来にとって正解だと思うのか。
My future is not the right framing there.
そりゃ不正解で
Right.
しょ。
It's a different objective.
でも不正解は無意味を意味しません。
Oh, where have we heard that before?
消し飲みの効果は知ってますか？
Did we drug him?
消し飲み？
Who is this kid?
それと毒物を混ぜると、
Now I got
まあ簡単に言うと
chemistry and alchemy.
苦しまずに死ねる。
Did we just murder him? Are we murdering also? Oh my god. Oh my god,
さ
we
っき
just
それ
murdered.
をコップに入れました。
He was prepared for this. Whoops. He's gonna go torture this bathroom.
そっちにじゃありませんよ。飲んだのは僕です。
No! No, 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 no. You didn't have to do that. No wonder he's so calm. He's not expected to be tortured. Speaking of Socrates,
その選択は教えに反してる。
well, we're so far beyond that.
死の先に恐ろしい運命が待ってるぞ。
死の先なんか誰も知りませんよ。
Yeah, and your whole thing has been called into question. You don't even know that the Earth rotates the sun. So credibility is somewhat diminished in your whole thing. And your takes are somewhat simplistic. So you're asking a lot here.
ソクラテス曰く、
There it is. There's Socrates.
エピクロス曰く、我々のあるところに死はない。死のあるところに我々はない。セネカ曰く、生は適切に活用すれば十分に
Well, he may not have
長い。
studied theology, but he definitely studied philosophy.
そんなの2000年近くも前の愚かな異教徒の言葉だろ。奴らには絶対心も救いもない。そんな言葉が何になる？
Nah, they did, though.
感動できる。
What is this word you used?
フベルトさんは死
Inspire.
んで消えた。
He's still alive.
僕の命に変えてでも、この感動を生き残らせる。
He became enlightened at 12, all from looking at stars.
じゃない。
Now he's scared.
でもそんなのを愛とも言えそうです。
In a very, very big way, yeah.
ではまた。
I wonder how this impacts the torturer. He might go on a trip before he goes. Is he already gone? He's already gone, right? I thought Rafal was the main character. He just does not wash his clothes. Wow, that's crazy. I did not expect that at all. I thought this was going to be like a long fight, a drawn-out struggle for Rafal to prove this from the cover of Secret. About the love stuff, I think in the first video on the show, I speculated that truth is one of those things where you're like skimming the edges of the concept of God. Love is probably another one, but that's a little bit tricky because love, like God itself, is a term that's just like stacked with possible things that people could mean. But my guess is the way he's using it, he's attributing it to something like a divine love, you know, like just a perception of inherent goodness, for lack of a better word, that underpins existence. And that would just be what God is. And as is in this case, religion, since it's made by a man, even though in its best case I think is an exploration and a method of exploring that depth of love, it certainly can deviate and get farther away from that source, as is the case here. Here is a way to frame the idea that there's benevolence and goodness and love at the center of the universe without God. That's kind of a trick, but it's fun to think about nonetheless. There is no such thing as pure subjectivity where like humans can create something out of a vacuum that doesn't have some basis in reality or the universe. We experience good and bad subjectively, and we may have subjective opinions about what what things are good and what things are bad, moment to moment, incident to incident, or topic to topic. But the possibility of there even being a spectrum of good and bad relies on there being a scale of something by which there's any sort of deliberation or determination at all. Some sort of objective reality by which we could make a comparison and notice differences. Humans didn't create pain. Humans are formed experiencing pain. The pain is felt subjectively, but pain itself and also pleasure are part of a previously existing infrastructure. And you can play with this idea sort of infinitely. Like you can argue, well, it's impossible to have a scale of better or worse, good and bad, without some sort of unifying goal. So then you almost have something like a will of the universe and a basis for comparison. And the more you meditate on this, the crazier it gets, even though it's really hard to explain. So like the question of what is pain? You can take the physical route of this signal hitting this neuron, I don't know, whatever the neuroscience is, and that gives a sensation of pain. And sure, that seems to be the explanation for humans on the physical level. But beyond that, behind that, what is pain? How is it even possible that neurons or physical matter can arrange in such a way that there is one that is good and one that is bad, or one that is painful and one that is pleasurable? What is the material basis even for that scale that makes it possible for neurons to arrange itself under that scale? And since humans didn't invent that, or animals didn't invent that, you can make the argument that there is something about the infrastructure of the universe before life that contains the pattern of, or is the foundation of, or is a mirror for that pain in a way that is fundamental to the code of existence itself. And this is already way out there, but another way you can go with this is, well, if the universe has something like a codified version of pleasure and pain, goodness will always eventually win. Because what is the pleasure and pain based on? The pain is based on you went the wrong direction and this is a negative thing. This thing probably needs to stop. It needs to go. You need to find out a different way to progress. That's the whole thing of like the wrong answer can be a useful answer. And the pleasure, the feeling of goodness is like, oh, this actually works. Let's keep doing more of this. And if the universe has its own mechanisms by this and reward systems for this, it's going to iterate until it sorts it out. And I think humans are probably playing that out and mirroring that, even though we think we invented it, on a very, very micro local scale, which is maybe why I think we turn to these ideas of God. It's because nothing about us is unique or spontaneously generated from humans. Humans are all leaves on the tree of existence. So we're going to contain the DNA of the universe and God, as long as you look at that in one direction, right? Every droplet of water in the ocean contains the essence of the ocean, but you cannot say that this one droplet of water is the entire ocean. And so in humanity as well, especially considering that DNA is not just biological, it's also societal, it makes sense how over time we would start to develop the sense for this like higher meaning, this higher beauty beyond just the immediate animal pleasures that were there and were useful probably because they helped us not succumb to the greater evil of just complete annihilation long enough to actually develop stuff and to start figuring some of this stuff out. This also, I think, is one of the counters to misanthropy, where humans are so terrible and evil and are a bacteria on the planet. It's like, give it some time, you know, like zoom out and look at the big picture of from what we came from, this just weird soup of chemicals in a world of death and decay. Just start with the first human and look at now the things that have emerged, like heliocentrism. A lot of this is the movement from the simple to the complex. It's going to take more work and more resources, and there are natural forces like their desire for comfort trying to pull you down and keep you contained, and yet there are beautiful discoveries and there are moments of alignment with beauty and truth and love. There are moments where special individuals see through the matrix and then harness some tiny piece of that and like contribute it, and it's not understood yet, but that's okay because it will win eventually, because gradually, little by little, we start to get this sense of alignment, because that process, that reward system, is one of the most fundamental things to the universe and therefore to our nature. And given enough iterations and enough time, despite many mistakes, despite many steps backwards, despite incredible evil even, and people who really hate it and would like to destroy it, those things will eventually run their course because they're sort of empty. The immediate desires and pleasures they gratify are much more transient and superficial than what is perhaps the core process and value system of the very world we're living in. 10 years later. Who picks up the mantle? It's gonna get out. I mean, it's gonna get out eventually.
もう少し登ったところだろう。
We're being physically forced into searching for heliocentrism like it's some kind of pirate's gold. Huh. And on we go. Maybe this is like to your eternity, right? Where like there are generations and generations, if I'm remembering that show correctly. Is there some chance we end the show in the modern day? That would be interesting because this is another bias. We think that people in the past were so stupid because, for example, they didn't know that the Earth was round, or they didn't know that the sun was the center of our solar system. And yet the very same mechanisms we're viewing in this show about certain quote unquote obvious, everyone knows that type things then are still exist today. They're still the same mistakes. They just take on different faces. People even do this with science, thinking that what's scientific is what's stated by an expert. Just like how religion is a pursuit of something beautiful and can get corrupted, science has its pitfalls. And just as there's blind belief in religion, there is blind belief in science. It'll really come down to the analysis and how much it's been personally investigated and how rigorous the thinking process is, how many unknown unknowns have been uncovered. Just like how Rafal gave a perfectly cohesive, coherent narrative for why the Earth is the center of the solar system, and that made sense, it just was missing a couple things. But as non-scientists, today, if we were to be given a perfectly sound narrative, there is a solid chance that we would grow attached to it and fight battles on behalf of it. it. To zoom out a little bit, to get more general with it, I think this also, as a meta concept, is one of those things of it's something we think is true, not because we know it's true or have investigated it, but because we're afraid of what it would mean to admit that we don't know. But applied to the whole process, where like maybe the real truth of this whole thing is that there are just many things we don't know. And there are so many ways in which that makes us vulnerable, and so many ways in which that makes us imperfect, and so many ways in which later people who discover these things will think we're stupid. And maybe even though we confess this and we say, oh, we're so small, we're just grains of sand in the universe, we actually are attached to belief that that's not the case, that each of us individually is really significant, and a significant being would be smart, and a significant being would know things. But maybe letting go of that isn't the death sentence it feels like, and it's not the value destruction it feels like. Maybe like Rafal's false path of adoring fans and whatever, it's just about tinkering with the scale of what gives us satisfaction and meaning. I can imagine a path where it just feels great to let go and be like, yeah, I really don't know much about the world. I know what my relationship with my friends are. I know what my relationship with my family is. I know how I feel on a day-to-day basis. I know what makes me feel good, and I know what makes me feel bad. I know what my conscience is telling me not to do and what is leading me towards. Maybe I'm just this vulnerable flesh and blood creature who's deeply imperfect in a world that is hopelessly out of my control and can destroy me at any moment, whether I think I know something or not. And I have all these limitations that I will never surpass because maybe there's just like physical limitations on what that means. Maybe that's okay because I can still experience the beauty that Nafal experiences and Hubert experienced. It's like Hubert said in that amazing speech he made, I'll show that even this tiny skull can appreciate God's beauty, or whatever the phrasing was. Let's think about it in a hypothetical. You find out tomorrow that everything you ever thought was a lie, everything you ever believed was wrong, and yet your whole life you've been parroting these things. You've just been saying these things out loud to others. You've even fought with people you care about over these things that now have been exposed to be completely a lie. And let's make this much worse. It's your fault because you could have known differently if you had tried harder. Or, I don't know if this is better or worse, you are destined to be stupid by the raw facts of your physical body. Your DNA and your flesh and blood material just dooms you to be an idiot forever. What does that mean for you in your life? The initial instinct is maybe something like fear or pain. Denial. No, I'm actually really smart. I was right about all of these things the whole time. It's this new information that's wrong. Trying desperately to cling on to it. But why? What about that is so important? What's so important about being smart? What does that really do for you? What about that is triggering a fear response? What is it about the feeling that you're right, being convinced that you're right, that you need to make you feel good? Now, this is really tough, but imagine we just try to change the scale a little bit of what value means. And we just imagine a hypothetical one where knowing, not knowing, smart, not smart is a neutral. It's not up or down on any kind of value scale. There's something else. Well, then to find out you're stupid, you might not be threatened by it. You might not think much of it at all. You might actually think it's kind of funny. It might become comedic how stupid you are. So just very esoteric general question, what's the best scale? Which scale is more robust? Which scale is closer to anything we can imagine as a source? The best we can possibly imagine is something like objective, godlike, or just universal goodness. What if somehow we were able to reprogram ourselves as tightly one-to-one as possible along that value scale, instead of other superficial metrics that we might just be inventing to give ourselves comfort from questions we don't know how to answer? Like, who knows the best that the Earth is the center of the solar system?